Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Thank you, America, for listening. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Quite a show coming up today, even though we are in a country with 72,000 dead from COVID. That is up 2,457 from yesterday, 1.23 million infected. We carry on. We bring you all the news you must have, the analysis you need. I want to start with a thank you. I've explained to you about our Angel Tree program this summer, and already dozens of you have stepped up and sent $200 to send a kid to camp or send them a blessings box. We're weighing the camping thing. I'm going to talk to Vice President Pence today, and one of the things I want to find out about is what can we do this summer? And there's some camp directors out there saying, by golly, I think we're going to be able to open these camps. But one way or the other, we're going to take care of these kids. And so if you would please, for every child of a prisoner out there, we need $200, either to send them to the camps that reopen or to send them a box of blessings. One way or the other, we will get it done. But we need $200 per person. If it's a blessings box, they'll get $150 in grocery cards, some sports equipment, an age-appropriate Bible. And if we can open some of these camps in a few of these places, we'll send them to camp. $200 donation from you helps a child of a prisoner one way or the other. And if you go up to the top of HughHewitt.com, you'll see a banner, an orange banner that says "Make a difference in the life of a prisoner's kid," and I really appreciate it. I mean, I barely mentioned it, and already 3 dozen of you have stepped up and said, I haven't even put, especially Mrs. Hewitt and I are sponsoring 5 kids this summer. I haven't even done that yet, so it's not us, it's you. Thank you. As you drive to work, you can redeem the day in this horrible time. Yesterday, President Trump went down to Arizona, one of my favorite states, and he said this about all of us, cut number 15.
I'm viewing our great citizens of this country, to a certain extent and to a large extent, as warriors. They're warriors. We can't keep our country closed. We have to open our country. Somebody said, we could keep it for the next 18 months. We could keep it for the next 2 years. Doug Ducey's done an incredible job as the governor of Arizona. The people aren't going to accept it. They won't accept it, and they shouldn't accept it. We have a great country. We can't keep it closed. I mean, I've had doctors say, well, why don't we close it for a couple of years? This is the United States of America. I created, with a lot of other very talented people and the people of our country, the greatest economy in the history of the world. The greatest that we've ever had, the greatest employment numbers, the best numbers we've ever had, the best stock markets. I think we had 144 days of record stock markets. And then one day they said, we have to close our country. Well, now it's time to open it up. And you know what? The people of our country are warriors, and I'm looking at it. I'm not saying anything is perfect. And yes, will some people be affected? Yes. Will some people be affected badly? Yes. But we have to get our country open, and we have to get it open soon.
He's absolutely right. And it is opening very, very soon. There's a New York Times story this morning that I just want to share with you. It's on the actual number of deaths by state. And this explains why there are many different views of what to do. New York City has 18,706 people dead, and we mourn them all, and that city has been devastated. New Jersey, the state, has 2,181 people dead. Illinois, 682. Massachusetts, 686. California, 627. Biggest state in the union. Maryland's had 207. Florida, which is pretty big too, 442. The state of Washington, 458. All of New York outside of the city, 109. All of Michigan, 111. Colorado has 124. Wisconsin has 141. Then we start to get into the states where it has not had as great an impact. Indiana has had 116 people die. South Carolina has 40. Arizona has had 53, where the president was yesterday. Texas, great, big, vast Texas, has had 29 people die. Vermont has had 20. Idaho has 27. New Hampshire has 29. Wyoming is one of the 2 states with 0. No one has died in Wyoming. Utah, 18. Maine, 32. Delaware is the 2nd state with 0 people dying. Oregon has had 12. Alabama has 4. For Arkansas, 14. Georgia, 19. Hawaii, 8. Iowa, 11. Kansas is different for some reason. 54 people have died there. Kentucky, a lot closer to, hot spots, 3. Missouri, 3. And then Minnesota has 24, and you wonder if it got into an old person's home. Montana, 6. Nebraska, 8. Nevada's had 46, not surprising with Vegas and the number of international travelers there. Oklahoma, 15. Tennessee, 47. This is the most surprising one of all. Washington State has had 1. Now, some states have got that are lagging, like Ohio, have had a number. And North Dakota probably doesn't have, North Carolina probably has some too, and Virginia definitely does. I know my state is locked down, but that's why there's such a different debate, is because the death toll is spread all over the place. President Trump was on the White House lawn yesterday before he left. The new death projections are over 100,000. Here's what he had to say about that. Cut number 3 of the president.
Well, it's a report, and that's a report with no mitigation. So based on no mitigation, but we're doing a lot of mitigation. And frankly, when the people report back, they're going to be social distancing, and they're going to be washing their hands, and they're going to be doing the things that you're supposed to do. We won't be going into stadiums full bore yet, for events and soccer and football and all of the different events. Baseball, I hope baseball can get going. But they won't be going in full bore yet. At some point, hopefully in the not-too-distant future. But that report is a no mitigation report, and we are mitigating.
He also went on to say, this is not a cost-free exercise when you lock down a state. Other people die in other ways. Cut number 4.
No, I'm not, because that assumes no mitigation. And we're going to have mitigation. No, we're letting people out. But the fact that we're letting people go to their jobs, they have to do it. If they held people any longer with the shutdowns, and you're going to lose people that way too, and you already have, I'm sure. But between drug abuse and, they say suicide, a lot of different things. There's no win, just so you know, there's no great win one way or the other, but I'll tell you where there is a win. We're going to build a country. I did it once. 2 months ago, we had the greatest economy in the history of the world, the best employment numbers we've ever had in history, right? Everybody agrees. Even CNN agrees with that one. But I will say this, we're going to do it again, and that's what we're starting. And I view these last couple of days as the beginning. We're going to build the greatest economy in the world again, and it's going to happen pretty fast.
Make the economy great again. He also talked about the Democrats do not want that. Cut number 6.
The House has put on a committee, an oversight committee of Maxine Waters and Maloney and the same people, and it's just a setup. But Dr. Fauci will be testifying in front of the Senate, and he looks forward to doing that. But the House, I will tell you, the House, they should be ashamed of themselves. And frankly, the Democrats should be ashamed, because they don't want us to succeed. They want us to fail so they can win an election, which they're not going to win. But they want us, think of it, they do everything they can to make things as bad as possible. And right now the stock market's way up. Everybody's excited. They're going back to work safely, but they're going back to work. We're opening up our country again. And this is what we're doing. And I'll tell you, the whole world is excited watching us because we're leading the world. And what happened should never, ever have happened. China should have informed us that they had a problem.
When we come back, more of the president on the White House lawn and your phone calls. We've got, again, Vice President Pence coming up next hour, Admiral Stavridis this hour. It's the day of senators as well. Martha McSally of Arizona, Ted Cruz of Texas, always interesting. Chuck Grassley of Iowa joins us, and Representative Gallagher of the sad Green Bay Packers. Don't go anywhere, America. A lot today on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by patternsofevidence.com.
What? Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. President on the White House Lion yesterday took the opportunity to address the so-called Lincoln Project, which is a group of about a dozen never-Trumpers who've raised some money from unsuspecting people. And he let loose with this fusillade, cut number 5.
Do you want to make any comment about this Lincoln Project ad that aired? You tweeted about it overnight.
Yeah, no, I saw it.
In America.
Yeah, I saw a project, a thing called the Lincoln Project, and I would have them change the name to the Losers Project, because if you take a look at Schmidt, it's George Conway. The guy is, Kellyanne must have done a big number on him, but it's George Conway and it's some other people, Weaver. Every one of them I either defeated or they lost by themselves. But it's a group of major losers. They're Republican losers. And if they would really think about it, I have 252 beautiful, brand new, conservative, wonderful judges, 2 Supreme Court judges that are great. We produced the greatest economy in history until a month and a half ago when we got hit by the virus, so we had to close it down, and we'll do it again. We've rebuilt our military. We've done things that nobody has been able to do. I've gotten the greatest tax cuts in history, in the history of our country, the biggest tax cuts. The Democrats want to raise your taxes. I've gotten regulation cuts, the biggest in the history of our country, no matter how long a president served. With all of that, I guess they don't like me, but let me just tell you, these are losers from day one. Guys like Bill Kristol, he's 0-32. George Conway, you take a look at him. Just take a look at that guy. The man's a stone-cold loser. So they should not call it the Lincoln Project. It's not fair to Abraham Lincoln, a great president. They should call it the Losers Project.
President Trump. The Losers Project. All right, let's look at the market and find out who's winners or losers. This is brought to you by Birch Gold. And you can get the Birch Gold by texting my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 474747. That's the easiest way to get the free information they'll offer you on diversifying your portfolio. Just text Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 474747. Now, Birch Gold is very aware that there are no firm answers to when America is going to return to work. We don't really know what the economy ahead is, but we do know that gold is gold, and the bottom never falls out of gold. Right now, it is at $17.07 an ounce. And so you ought to be diversified. I tell you this, I've been telling you this for years. And Birch Gold is the place to do it. Either buy gold directly from them, text my name, Hugh, to 474747, or go to Hugh Gold, or especially in your retirement, which is for the long term, roll over part of your 401k into a precious metals backed IRA. They will tell you how to do it. You can trust. I buy my gold from Birch Gold, and I suggest you do as well. And you diversify with Birch Gold. Again, you send my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 474747. Yesterday, the Dow was up 133, the NASDAQ 98, the S&P 25. Good day on the market. Looks like it could be another good day because, again, I look abroad. Japan had another bad day, but Hong Kong was up. England and Germany not up as much, but up. All right, that's what matters. They're up. So Europe usually gives us a wink as to what will happen here. And the 10-year Treasury is at 0.66, so it went up a little bit. Oil is up to $25 a barrel. That is really good news. When it gets that high, that means that it's begun to firm up. Now, the market's going to price in the terrible Disney earnings yesterday. They plummeted 90%, and that will kill the Disney stock in the morning. But look beyond this quarter, look ahead, and diversify. Birch Gold is where you do that. You send my name, Hugh, to 474747, and then, or you go to hughgold.com, and then come right back, because I'm joined by Admiral Stavridis. Huge step by the Navy this week, obscured by all the news about the virus. They awarded a frigate. We'll talk about what it does and how many should be built and where with the Admiral right after the break. Stay tuned to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Prison Fellowship's Angel Tree Summer Camps. Click on the banner at hughhewitt.com.
33 minutes after the hour, America. So glad to welcome back our weekly guest, Admiral James Stavridis. He is the former Allied Supreme Commander of NATO. He's also the former head of Southern Command. Four-star Admiral Stavridis, welcome back. We have some good news to celebrate this week with the award of a new frigate for the Navy. Why is this good news?
First of all, because it settles us quickly, and this has been a very fast process by the normal standards of ship procurement. It settles us on a course forward. There were 5 different competing designs, as you know, Hugh. So let's pick one. Let's get out there. Let's cut some steel. Let's build these ships. Number 2, as you and I have talked about, these are the eyes of the fleet. They're less expensive. They're half the cost of the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, which is the workhorse of the fleet, so we can build more of them. Quantity has a quality all its own, as you and I often say. And third, I really like the international aspect of this. This is the base class of the ship is one being built by the Italians, but built completely here in the United States, in Wisconsin. And it's exported to Italy, to France, to Morocco. It's got a global kind of context to it, so it'll be very interoperable for the United States with our allies.
Now, Admiral, I quoted you in my Washington Post column about this, the line you just used, that quantity has a quality all its own, and your other line, which is the oceans aren't getting any smaller. I also quoted an expert who whispers that the whisper number, that's sort of like the advanced number you get on earnings on Wall Street, the whisper number for the high end of the buy here is 73 frigates. We've only bought 10. Now, I am reading Arthur Herman's amazing book, Freedom's Forge. Have you read that yet, Admiral?
I have. It's absolutely terrific about the U.S.'s ability to mobilize its industrial base in World War II.
Well, and I'm stunned. On one day in 1940, Bill Knudsen orders 292 ships in one day. And then a few months later, the Navy comes back and said, we missed on destroyers. We need 50 more. So he orders 10 more slipways at 6 more yards. Could we not now direct that if we're going to go to 73, let's get rolling. Let's stand up a couple other shipyards, maybe bring in a couple of other defense contractors and get rolling?
There's nothing wrong with this concept of Freedom's Forge, this idea that the U.S. industrial base can do anything once we get it moving in the right direction. And by the way, there's an applicability to the virus, which is our ability that you've seen to mobilize and build up those medical supply chains. And I think we're going to see some distinctly American classes of medical supply chain coming out of this virus. But back to frigates and destroyers. Yes, we certainly have that capacity in this country. And I would argue this is a good time to look at it. And last point on this, Hugh, those kind of yards don't have to just build destroyers and frigates. They can be used to make commercial shipping as well, something where we could create jobs, we could build up our merchant marine. There are a number of ways this could be good for the U.S. economy, particularly coming out of the economic challenges we're going to see.
Now, explain, if you would, Admiral, to a civilian like me, what is the difference between a frigate and a destroyer, and what can they operate independent of a carrier strike force? Can they go where a flag needs to be seen? If a war doesn't need to start, it just still needs to have presence?
You've got it exactly right. Let's do it in tonnage. A destroyer these days is about 8,000 tons and about 500 feet long, so about a football field and a half. And a frigate is just a bit smaller than that. These days, a frigate is pretty big by previous standards, but call it 4,000 to 6,000 tons, about half the size of a destroyer, maybe a bit more than half the size with the new class that we're buying. And they are a little bit shorter. They're about, 450 feet long. So they're just a bit smaller. They have a few less weapon systems on them. The crew is a little smaller. That's important because they're less expensive. Crew on a destroyer, 270. Crew on a frigate, maybe 150. Oh. So they're a little smaller, a little more economical. These are going to be brand new. We're going to put the Aegis combat system, which is our top-end air defense and air surveillance system, on the new frigates. And yes, they can show the flag. They can operate a helicopter. They can operate independently. You can put them in smaller groups, which we sometimes call a flotilla. And right now, stop with this, but right now, in the Barents Sea, way up north, in the high north, the Arctic, on the northwest coast of Russia, are 4 U.S. Navy warships. 3 of them are destroyers operating up there. These frigates are big enough that they could operate in those seas as well. So these are highly capable ships, but less expensive. That's the key.
No, I tried to explain to Dwayne, he's slow on this, the first island chain. The first island chain is what? Taiwan, Japan, the Philippines, some of the Indonesian archipelago, but perhaps Malaysia. And why is the frigate so necessary for the first island chain?
The frigate is small enough and potentially stealthy enough to operate in small groups for it and bring its sensor package in relatively close at less risk. Less risk principally because it has so many fewer crew members on it. You're not going to want to put your big, powerful, but central aircraft carrier that far forward initially. So you need forces that can roll forward, that have anti-submarine capability to go against Chinese diesels in close, shallow enough to operate where the diesels operate. These ships can be a critical part of the forward presence in that first island chain, while your carriers start off further out to sea. And of course, it's not just those frigates. You're going to roll in our submarines, our long-range bombers. This is all going to be preceded by long-range cruise missiles that will go in and knock down defenses. Let's hope we never get in a war with China. But if we are ever in a confrontation in the South China Sea, these frigates will be very, very critical to that effort.
Now, I'm going to ask the Vice President, so I'll ask you first. Are we in Cold War 2.0, Admiral?
No, I'm with Henry Kissinger on this. He said that we're in the foothills of a Cold War. I'd say another way to put it is we're not in a Cold War yet, but I can see it from here. And I think we want to avoid that. I really do. And so the question, I think, for the Vice President, for anyone who talks and thinks about international relations today is, how do we avoid that? And certainly at the moment, we have a basket of challenges, from 5G network security to trade to tariffs to the confrontation we just discussed in the South China Sea, and of course, the results of this terrible virus, which originated in China, and China's responsibility, culpability, and accountability for it. Those are big challenges. My view would be we're still at a stage where we can pick and choose. We can confront where we must: South China Sea, cybersecurity, accountability for the virus. Confront where we must, but cooperate where we can. Find zones of cooperation where we can work together with China and try and avoid entering a full-blown Cold War that will benefit neither nation.
I'd like to go back to the Lincoln Memorial, and Dwayne can pull the tape from yesterday and 2 days ago that I've been playing. It is the key bit of tape that, in that whole Lincoln Memorial dialogue, I distilled it down to one exchange, which I think is the most important, when President Trump says this.
What they really treated the world badly on, they stopped people going into China, but they didn't stop people going into the USA and all over the world. So you could fly out of Wuhan, where the primary problem was, all of the problem, essentially, also where the lab is. But you could fly out of Wuhan and you could go to different parts of the world, but you couldn't go to Beijing and you couldn't go to any place in China. So what's that all about? In other words, they knew they had a problem. I think they were embarrassed by the problem, very embarrassed. And, the case could be made. They said, hey, look, this is going to have a huge impact on China, and we might as well let the rest of the world, because...
He stopped right there. He didn't say let the rest of the world suffer, but there's a case that could be made. What's that all about? You know what he's intimating, Admiral, is that they made a cold-hearted calculation to lessen their comparative disadvantage by visiting it or allowing it to be visited upon the world. That's very provocative.
It is provocative, and I think what it screams for is international investigation. If you think about it, when a airliner is shot down by Russia over Ukraine, the global calls for a massive level of investigation, in my view, appropriately, are taken up by virtually every nation. And there is a detailed investigation that occurs with international aspects to it, and it points to blame. I think here we're going to end up with a virus that's going to kill tens of millions, let's hope not hundreds of millions of people. It screams for a massive investigation. I think the United States, working with our allies, and not just our treaty allies, but our partners and friends around the world, should step up and make that job one in the international system. And I think the pressure, if it were global, on China to participate in that would be massive. And it would at least begin to crystallize the fact set here. Certainly, as President Trump lays it out, it's highly disturbing and leads to not just culpability, but real accountability, reparations, working with other nations to help resolve the mistakes that China appears to have made here. So I think this is very serious business. It requires a huge investigation, and I think the United States ought to be taking the lead in bringing that to reality.
Admiral James Stavridis, always a pleasure. Follow him on Twitter at StavridisJ. Go to admiralstav.com for the latest on what the Admiral has written, his writing, and his where he's appearing and talking virtually or in person. None of us on the speaking circuit for the Washington Speakers Bureau are actually out doing any speaking right now, but some of us are doing virtual stuff, and Admiral is one of those guys you could actually hold a virtual meeting for your board and summon him, and everyone would be happier for it. I mean, really happier for it. Thank you, Admiral. Time for me to have my relieffactor.com. Got my 6 miles in yesterday, and I avoided bicyclists without masks. Thank goodness. They are my new bête noire. There you go. Relieffactor.com. Taking my four. I can't cook omega. And my piping hot coffee. It's piping hot today. A little bit harder to swallow the relieffactor.com supplements when it's piping hot. I got a tie on if you're watching, by the way, on YouTube. Got the Vice President today. You got to have a tie on. But you saw me, the coffee's in. I brought the jug today because I wanted some hot coffee in the event the voice was going with the Vice President. So I've got my hot coffee here with my Abbey Road cup. All right. Paul is dead. I am the walrus, that whole thing. And I want you to try relieffactor.com. Tens of thousands of people take it every day, including me. I've done more than 200 miles in 6 weeks. And with bad back and all, creaky knees, rotator cuff doesn't really matter when you run. Can't lift any weights or do my usual 4,000 push-ups a day. But I can get out there and trundle because of relieffactor.com. And this relieffactor.com, they also bring you honorboundcoffee.com, where 100% of the profits go to support military families. Honorboundcoffee.com. Don't go anywhere, America. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. I want to finish what the president had to say on the White House lawn yesterday. Coming up next hour, Vice President Pence joins me. Don't miss that. Here's Donald Trump on the White House lawn yesterday talking about testing capacity cut number 7.
We're going to see Honeywell. They have done an incredible job on many fronts. And so I'm going to pay my respects to a great company and a great state, the state of Arizona.
They do make N95 now.
They make N95, yeah. And they do, and they make them good. They don't make the ones that don't work, like we got sent from certain other countries. No, like other people got sent from other countries. We're making massive numbers of masks. We're making our ventilators. We have the best testing anywhere in the world, not even close. The antibody test, you see what's going on with that? That's going to be something that look, we have so much testing. I don't think you need that kind of testing and that much testing, but some people disagree with me and some people agree with me. But we have the greatest testing in the world, and we have the most testing in the world.
And then one more where he talks about why Dr. Fauci won't be testifying before the House. Cut number 8.
So I'm leaving for Arizona. We're going to be at the Honeywell plant, which is doing great work for us. And it'll be, I think, a great day. I love Arizona. Go ahead, please. I just got information. Nothing to do with our government, but I just got information on that. So we'll find out. We just heard about it. But whatever it is, we'll let you know. But it has nothing to do with our government. Because the House is a setup. The House is a bunch of Trump haters. They put every Trump hater on the committee, the same old stuff. They frankly want our situation to be unsuccessful.
Pretty strong charge. There's not a bit of truth. There's not a little bit of truth there. There's a significant amount of truth there. When you put Maxine Waters on a committee, you're not dealing with good faith. It's just that simple. All right, let me do a pre-market report brought to you by AndrewandTodd.com. Andrew and Todd, this is the time to buy a house, America. Vice President Pence coming up, so I'm not going to have time to do this for you in the second segment. AndrewandTodd.com. With a 10-year treasury at 0.66%, you ought to go to their website, answer a couple of questions, and they will tell you what you can do with your house. Or you can call them at 888-888-1172. They're with Sierra Pacific Mortgage, 888-888-1172. Andrew and Todd are so jammed up. They've got so many loan applications, but you know what? They're pros. They're handling them all. They're getting them all taken care of. Because people know right now is the best time ever. I saw a story yesterday, the housing market hasn't been impacted at all because people know. These are, the downside is death and financial disaster for some corporations, and the upside is never been a better time to buy a house or refinance a house. That's why Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian with Sierra Pacific are where you ought to go, 888-888-72. 888-888-1172. Dow was up 133 points yesterday. NASDAQ up 98. The S&P up 25. And oil is back up this morning to $25 a barrel. Remember, it was down in the 10s. Now it's back up. The world's getting organized. The world sees an end to this. The world sees a way out. We've got therapeutics. We're working on a vaccine. The projections are bad, but not a total standstill. And the machine is rumbling to life. And that means the money's going to accelerate. The whole country's washed down with money. When it accelerates, boy, inflation is going to come, and that's when you're not going to be able to afford a house. Get in line right now. Can I also please tell you about the Angel Tree effort? Dozens of you have already gone to HughHewitt.com and found the Angel Tree banner. You want to send a kid to camp. That will be possible in a few parts of the country, but there are going to be some places where we can't run a camp. Right? Because, can't run a camp in New York City, in the suburbs of New York, but maybe out in the middle of nowhere in, Wyoming doesn't have not one COVID death. Maybe you can do one there. Leave it to the folks at Prison Fellowship to figure it out. But whether we send a box of blessings to a kid or they can actually go to camp, it'll cost $200 a kid. And these are children whose mom or dad are in jail. These are children who really need your help because in the middle of this pandemic, they don't even have mom or dad. It's worse than deployment. A lot of military families are struggling through a deployment like none other because there's an extraordinary chaos at home, and mom or dad are off in Iraq or Afghanistan or Djibouti or on a boat somewhere or a ship somewhere or flying off of Guam or someplace like that, and they can't get home, but they're going to come home, and they have a date certain when they're going to get back. Almost certain. Sometimes they get their orders extended, but that's not like prison. And so if you've got a mom or a dad, or in some very terrible cases, both parents in prison, a box of blessings that cost $200 and got some sports equipment, some special coupons for great food, or maybe that precious ticket to camp, depending on which part of the country you're in. That's what Angel Tree does, and that's why we need your help. Please go to HughHewitt.com. Join the dozens of people who've already stepped up. $200 does the trick for one kid. And you're being a light in the darkness. You're throwing some hope into a life that is pretty grim when you do that, and I deeply appreciate it. And special room for you in heaven. I'll be right back, America. The Vice President of the United States joins me next on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Don't forget to sign up for the Hughiverse. All of Hugh's broadcasts on demand, the after show, which in my opinion is worth the price all by itself, Dwayne FM, and all sorts of bonus content. www.hughiverse.com.
Who are now saying, why should we bail out the Democratic states? The Democratic states have been supporting them for years. New York, every year, $29 billion more paid in than it gets out. New Jersey, also a high coronavirus state, $18 billion more every year than it gives out. Massachusetts, Connecticut, California. And then you look at the Republicans who now say, well, we don't want to help the Democratic states. They are actually
interchangeable plate heat, so the sausage is cooked. Grill.
who are now saying,
Got it, Hugh. Go
Three,
ahead.
two,
Got it, Hugh. Go
three.
ahead.
18 influenza went through a dozen passages. Mutations, I think, is how it.
Got it, Hugh. Go
Three,
ahead.
2, 1. Please to welcome.
Joe or
Pleased to welcome back Vice President Mike Pence. Mr. Vice President, welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Thanks, Hugh. Great to be with you.
I've got 10 questions for you, only 10, starting with the easiest one. The 1918 influenza went through a dozen passages, mutations, I think is how a layman would call it, during the summer of 18. It came out more deadly in the fall. So the first question is, The disease thus far, except for very rare and very tragic cases, has spared children, thank God, and young adults. Is there anything you've heard in these briefings with these scientists, these amazing scientists and doctors, that would lead you to believe the virus is mutating in a way that worries you that it might be growing deadlier for children?
Well, first, foremost, our hearts grieve for the more than 70,000 Americans that have been lost to the coronavirus, and there's not a day goes by that I don't think of those families, and as every American does. But each and every day that I've led the White House Coronavirus Task Force, we start out with the numbers, and what the scientists tell me at this point is that what we saw in the beginning continues to hold, and that is that for many people who contract the coronavirus, they'll have no symptoms, or they'll have simply flu-like symptoms. But for seniors with serious underlying health conditions, or with those with any immunodeficiencies, the threat of serious catastrophic consequences are very real. We're watching it very closely, particularly with regard to potential impacts on children. We're carefully evaluating the differences in the West Coast spread of the coronavirus and the East Coast spread of the coronavirus to determine whether or not there may have been slight differences even between those. But at this point, what the scientists continue to tell us is that what we thought in the beginning continues to be the case, that for younger, healthy Americans, and that the risk of serious illness remains fairly low, even for people that contract the coronavirus. And that's one of the reasons when you see the phased reopening plan that President Trump put forward right from the beginning and throughout, there's a focus on seniors, on long-term care, and on vulnerable communities around the country. We want to make sure that we have the kind of testing in place to be able to identify people who have risk factors, and to get them the health care and to do the kind of contact tracing and containment that we need to do in the days ahead.
Well, that is great news, because as bad as it is, if it had targeted children, we would be just wrapped in grief, and we already are. But it's not kids, so I'm glad to hear that.
Right.
Age is not. You're a good lawyer, Mr. Vice President. Age is not a suspect classification. So, do you anticipate guidance from government, state, local, federal, about adding age discrimination guidelines that might say these plane flights, for example, are only for 45 years and younger, so that people might feel better about traveling with groups that are naturally more resilient in the face of this virus?
It's a very interesting question. And, when we had conversations with the commissioners of the major university and college athletic associations not long ago, we talked about that they might consider asking some of the elderly alumni to consider taking a pass on some sporting events should they restart in the summer or in the fall. But we would leave those decisions to businesses, to state governors, to what we would determine to be most appropriate. I think the guidance that we've issued at this point in terms of the president's guidelines to open up America again are intended to create a framework for a safe and responsible reopening. And as I stand here today, 41 states have already announced their own plans, many of which directly draw from the president's guidance. We think all of which represent the kind of phased approach that was contemplated in the administration's proposals. And I must tell you, standing here today, despite the grievous losses, the truth is that even in hot spots around the country, hospitalizations are down, emergency room admissions are down. We even see the number of fatalities declining consistently over the last 6 days, and that's all a tribute to the American people and the willingness of the American people to heed the federal guidelines that the president issued during that 45-day period of time, and to issue the ongoing guidance from federal and state authorities. We've made great progress. We've slowed the spread. Most importantly, we've saved lives, Hugh, and that's a tribute. That's a tribute to the American people.
Now, this is in the category of small but important to parent questions. And I know from my daughter, this is important to her. And I'm an old lifeguard from Niles Waddell Pool in Warren, Ohio's Packard Park. These city pools are where kids come and gather every summer. They make an unbelievably hot summer possible to get through. Has the task force suggested maybe opening again? Age restricted, keep the older people away, keep the people who've got health compromised, but get the pools open for the kids?
Well, one of the things that we presented not long ago at a briefing for the White House Coronavirus Task Force was a study conducted by infectious disease experts at DHS that found that humidity and sunlight have a very, very positive effect in reducing the half-life of the coronavirus. And, we've shared that information with the public and with state governments. And I would just say that on all of those kinds of decisions, we just continue to urge people to look to their state and local authorities. But it should be a cause of encouragement that we don't know for sure. This is a new virus. We have not been through a summer season with it, but all of our health experts have at least speculated in discussions since I took this job that there is a possibility that much like the flu and other viruses, that there'll be seasonal implications, and that we did produce that study that said that humidity and sunlight are our allies in this fight against the coronavirus. And so being outdoors and being able to enjoy the outdoors and the sunlight is a positive. But all of that, the progress we've made will continue to depend on a measure of social distancing, good hygiene, but the progress that we have made thus far is really been remarkable. And we do think that if the American people continue to put into practice the guidance of state and local officials and good common sense as we reopen states around the country, that we think we could be in a very different place by shortly after Memorial Day or early June.
Well, if you can get specific guidance on pools, I think a lot of parents will be very happy with the task force. Now, this is a suggestion disguised as a question, sort of like a Jeopardy game thing. And it really is for Mrs. Pence, who is one of the country's terrific teachers out there who loves their students. What about a general do-over year, Mr. Vice President, where everyone goes back to the grade they were in, whether it's K through grad school, so that, with some financial aid from the government, you don't lose half a year, colleges are assured of getting their tuition. Kids are assured of getting it. Has anyone thought about a do-over year for education?
I'd say, it is a suggestion disguised as a question, Hugh.
Yes.
And so I think but education is a state and local function. But we're already beginning to have discussions with members of Congress in both parties about providing additional aid to states, and those would be decisions. But you mentioned my wife; she's a school teacher.
Yep.
Kind of you to mention her. But I'd like to just give a shout out. I think it's National Teacher Appreciation Day today. And to every one of the teachers that have been doing the distance teaching, using online platforms and FaceTime and Zoom to continue to educate their kids. I know my wife has been reviewing art submissions. She's an art teacher at an elementary school. But teachers have, a lot of times, many of whom have had families of their own that are home, have gone on and continued to teach. And anyone in the sound of my voice that is a teacher that's been out there teaching our kids through these difficult times, we just want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts. But I'll take your suggestion disguised as a question back into the conversation.
More coming back with the Vice President in just a minute. I do want to echo that thank you to teachers everywhere. My idea of a do-over year just works. I understand that teachers are working hard as they are a long distance, but I'm thinking about how do you restart an education system that's frozen? So I'm glad he's taking that back to the task force. Let me also say, and the Vice President will understand, Angel Tree, because he's a big supporter of prison fellowship. Angel Tree is the part of the prison fellowship that takes care of kids, and we need your donations. A few kids will be able to go to camp if you send $200 in. Most kids will get a blessings box from the prison fellowship people who run Angel Tree from their mom and dad with a note, sports equipment, food, coupons. Either way, we need your help for these children whose mom or dad are in jail. Please do that and then come. You can do that at Hugh Hewitt during the break, then come right back. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show with Vice President Mike Pence. Those, and then I'll go to straight questions. This is 100-year. Those, and then I'll go to straight questions. This is 100.
Into the conversation.
All right.
Into the conversation.
All right. What? All right. What? Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt talking with Vice President Mike Pence. Of course, always great to talk to the Vice President. I often disguise my policy preferences and my ideas as a question. All right, one more of those, and then I'll go to straight questions. This is a 100-year event. Haven't had it in 100 years, and so maybe it requires a once every 100-year solution, and this is not very Republican when it comes to paying for this. How about a one-time net worth tax or a one-time wealth tax of 5 or 10%? I'd be willing to do that, Mr. Vice President. This is a crisis. Has anyone kicked around the idea of asking the people to whom the country has been great to one time dig deep into their wealth and pony up?
Well, look, President Trump has got our economic team working on a range of proposals, particularly as we look at what's commonly referred to as a Phase 4 legislative package. We actually think the way to jumpstart this economy is exactly the opposite, Hugh. We think now is the time for us to look at eliminating the payroll tax, to look at other possible tax reforms. I mean, look, the president often says this, and it's you can't say it too often. Is it that this is what you said? It's a 100-year event. No one saw this coming. The impact on our economy, the impact on businesses large and small, and hardworking American families is utterly unprecedented in our lifetimes. And so we need to think boldly about how once we largely put the coronavirus in the past, which may well be in the months ahead, that we find ways to encourage investment, encourage growth, and encourage the American people to safely and responsibly return to work and return to all of the activities that we all enjoy as parts of communities. I really do believe that it'll be one of the primary focus of this president going forward is how do we safely and responsibly open up America again, but what policies are we going to be able to enact that will create the kind of investment that will create jobs and growth in this economy. One of the things the president's often talked about is allowing for the expensing once again of business costs for dining out. It's one of the ways that you can encourage businesses to have their employees start going back to restaurants and doing business at restaurants, as once was the case before that tax deduction was eliminated. But rather than raising taxes, I promise you, President Trump's going to use the full strength of the American economy, because this is a president who knows that growth will solve all of our problems. We get the American economy growing again, starting to grow in the third quarter, rolling in the fourth quarter, and as the president said, we think 2021 could be one of the most prosperous years for economic growth in American history.
I agree with that, but I don't want to raise marginal rates at all, and I'm for cutting taxes, but one-time dips into the net wealth of people. Now, just think about it. Now, let's turn to religious liberty, Mr. Vice President. Faith communities have to come together, and not just for their own souls, but for the work that they do for the lost and the least. And you know this as well as anyone. And hold on that. One of the faith communities, the Vice President will be back after the break. He's an old radio guy, thank goodness. Lawyer, radio guy, member of the House. He knows that one of the faith communities I promote is the Prison Fellowship Angel Tree. I need you to go over to hughhewitt.com and make a contribution to those kids whose mom or dad are in prison. While you're there, hit the relieffactor.com button, please, as well, because sponsors for this show are vital in this period of time, and relieffactor.com has stood by us, and we stand by them. Tens of thousands of people take it every day. I take it every day. I took it in the first hour. I remind you about it 2 more times in the course of the show. This is one of those. Also remind you, the Vice President's got a son in the military, as you all know. Honorboundcoffee.com. Honorboundcoffee.com. All of us with people in the military and our families know that their families make great sacrifices. Honorbound Coffee supports those military families by dedicating 100% of their profits to the men and women who are serving in the military and their families. So get your coffee from Honorbound Coffee and come right back. I'll continue the conversation about religious liberty with the Vice President right after this break. Stay tuned to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Prison Fellowship's Angel Tree Summer Camps. Click on the banner at hughhewitt.com.
On this show that the government, not just for their own souls, but for the work that they do for the lost, not just for their own souls, but one time,
2021 could be one of the most growth in American history.
I agree with that, but I don't want to raise marginal rates at all, and I'm for cutting taxes, but one-time dips into the net wealth of people. Now, just think about it. Now, let's turn to religious liberty, Mr. Vice President. Faith communities have to come together, and not just for their own souls, but for the work that they do for the lost and the least. And you know this as well as anyone. Now, the Attorney General have to come together, and not just for their own souls, but for the work that they do for the lost and the least. And you know this as well as anyone. Now, the least, and you know this as well as anyone. Now, the Attorney General. Now, the Attorney General has told me on this show that the government.
Yes, sir.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt inside the ReliefFactor.com studio inside the Beltway, talking with Vice President Mike Pence. Now, the Attorney General has told me on this show that the government will intervene where local and state governments are discriminating specifically against religious organizations in a way that they aren't against others. Have you seen any patterns that disturb you here? And have you seen the DOJ doing what you want done with regard to what is an unconstitutional infringement of free exercise?
Well, I couldn't be more proud of the fact that the Justice Department weighed in on some action by the state of Virginia that was sanctioning a church with penalties for having had 16 people come to a Palm Sunday service in a sanctuary that seats about 250 people. Look, the liberties enshrined in the Constitution still apply to every American, even in the middle of a national emergency. And President Trump and our entire administration have championed religious liberty of every American of every faith. And I couldn't be more proud of the Justice Department for standing up with that Virginia church that's challenging Governor Northam's ban on in-person religious services. Look, many states around the country in their reopen plans are allowing people to convene again at places of worship this weekend, and I have every confidence the American people are going to do that responsibly. We can do the social distancing. People can sit a couple of seats apart. I'm sure churches and synagogues may consider adding additional services to be able to spread people out. But I would tell you the faith of the American people that has shined through the compassion and care of communities of faith through the course of this epidemic have been incredibly inspiring. And when our communities of faith are strong, America is strong, and the needs of our most vulnerable are cared for. And we've seen that throughout this epidemic.
Now, Mr. Vice President, most religious liberty cases are decided by federal district courts, not the courts of appeals, certainly not the Supreme Court. They don't have enough time. And I'm doing some special pleading here for California. We've got so many vacant district courts. People like Mark Scarsi have been nominated and had a hearing, but they haven't had a vote. People like Rick Richmond have been nominated. They haven't had a hearing. Even a Democrat like John Flynn is caught somewhere in the pipeline. Can you nudge Lindsey Graham and Pat Cipollone and even Senators Feinstein and Harris to get some California judges? Because we have just got courts that are not functioning.
Well, I will tell you, because I've been around when he's done it. I mean, the Senate returned this week. House returns next week, but the Senate is where we confirm our court appointments. And other than the health and well-being of the American people in confronting the coronavirus, this president is going to continue to call on Democrats in the Senate to stop the obstruction. I don't know the exact number right now. We've got more than 150 administration appointees who are continuing to await administration action. The President Trump has, 2 Supreme Court justices and appointed a record number of judges to the Court of Appeals of any president in American history. But we've got some of the most outstanding nominees for our federal judiciary that have been waiting for months, and in some cases, our appointments have been waiting for years. And it's time for Senator Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats to sit down at the table to clear these administration appointees, to get these judges on the bench. It's all going to be a part of how we get America moving again.
It is. Now I got 3 more. This is a hard one. The president and you at the Lincoln Memorial talked about China, and the president said that, look, the Chinese allowed people from Wuhan to fly to international destinations, but not within China, and he intimated that they may have done that knowingly for the purposes of spreading the disadvantage, the economic chaos. Are we in Cold War 2.0? Vice President Pence?
Well, let me say, President Trump's made it clear that we're going to get to the bottom of what happened in China and why it was that China and the World Health Organization did not inform the United States or nations around the planet of the real threat of the coronavirus. We've got our intelligence community working on that now. And I know we'll get to the bottom of the facts, but that we're going to hold, as the president's already suspended payments to the World Health Organization. The president's made it clear that at the right time, we're going to bring the facts to the American people, and we're going to hold China accountable. That being said, look, one of the enduring lessons that I think has broken through with the American people has been just how right President Trump has been for years about the need to reset our trading relationship with China first and with other nations around the world. I mean, we've met the needs of our healthcare community. We've had what we call an air bridge. It's flown 119 flights of supplies in from around the world, of masks and gloves and gowns. But one of the things going forward is we are going to be working very earnestly to bring back home and domestic production of these critical elements of our healthcare system. And But I think all of your listeners can be confident that President Trump, as he's done from day one, is going to continue to stand strong about the advantage that China has taken of the United States for decades to reset that relationship, but specifically on the coronavirus, we're going to get to the bottom of it, and we're going to hold those that did not play straight with the world accountable.
Well, you hesitated, though. You don't want to use the word Cold War 2.0, do you? And I don't understand why, but I understand diplomacy. Maybe it's not an opportune time to do it, but it does seem like among the masks that are at issue is the one that's coming off the CCP.
Well, look, we hope for a better relationship with China. But whether it be the imposition of tariffs, whether it be the way we've spoken out against human rights abuses by the People's Republic of China, the suppression of religious freedoms, the persecution of Christian pastors, of Muslim Uyghurs, the confronting China with their ambitions in the South China Sea, and continuing to defend our commitment to freedom of navigation. We'll continue to make all of those stands. But, from early on, the president forged a good working relationship with President Xi, and we continue to hope for better things in our relationship with China. But the American people can be confident this president, this administration, will continue to stand firm on behalf of our economy and on behalf of our most cherished ideals.
Two quick closing questions, Mr. Vice President, one political and one about sports. Campaign 2020 is upon us. Will you be recommending to the president that he allow the traditional television and cable networks, many of which are just off the rails, provide the questioners as opposed to, the arbitration approach where the president names one and Vice President Biden names one and those two agree on a third? Because it just seems to me most of these networks, there's some exceptions, but most of them are off the rails.
Well, I'll leave that to the president, and I know that the debate commission has been around for a while, and I'll leave that to the campaign. I would tell you all of my energies continue to be consumed with the work that we've done on the White House Coronavirus Task Force, a task force that was stood up in January, stood up at roughly the same time that the president suspended all travel from China and bought our nation invaluable time to marshal our national response to save lives, slow the spread. And but I must tell you that come this fall, whether it's in the debates or beyond, I welcome the opportunity to talk about this president and this administration's record in responding to this extraordinary pandemic and its impact on the American people. I think the president's provided the kind of leadership I've seen it day in and day out that has brought us to a moment where today we see light at the end of the tunnel. We see 41 states already announcing plans to reopen. And as I said, despite the fact that we mourn with those who mourn, 70,000 American families that have lost loved ones, when you look at what the projections were early on, with no mitigation, more than 1 million to 2 million losses. Even with mitigation, President and I were told that we could lose between 100 and and 240,000 Americans, but because of what the American people have done, because of the leadership the president has provided in full partnership with governors. We're on a path for much fewer losses, and I look forward to taking that case and the story of the great, extraordinary progress we made in the last 3.5 years to the American people this fall.
Well, I genuinely appreciate it. I know the audience does. The hours and time, attention, concern, prayer that you have put into this, along with your colleagues. Just please nudge Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci to come back on the show because they're great. My very last question. Have you got any word on Major League Baseball? This is the Indians' year, Mr. Vice President. Are you going to be on the road for any first pitch days? Are you going to be out there throwing out the first pitch soon anywhere?
Boy, I sure hope so. And I know that Major League Baseball and all of our professional sports organizations are reviewing plans for how they can restart America. But it's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine a summer without baseball in this country, as much as it's hard to imagine a fall without football. But as we all do our part, as we continue the social distancing, as we heed the guidance of state and local officials, as we do our part to responsibly reopen our states and our communities, every day we're one day closer back to enjoying every aspect of American life, including a great day at the ballpark.
Mr. Vice President,
I'm our hearts out to get to that day.
I am with the president in being in awe of your being able to answer a question without answering my question. Do you have any hint for baseball fans that maybe we get the game back soon?
I'm hoping that every single day. I hope to have a Coke and a hot dog in my hand and to be enjoying a good ball game, although I am a Cub fan.
I'm sorry to hear that, and I'm still bitter over 2016. But, Mr. Vice President, thank you for your time. You've been very generous. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Hugh, and thanks for all you've done to keep the public informed throughout these challenging times.
Our pleasure.
You've been exceptional.
Our real
God
pleasure.
bless you.
Be well. I got to say that when the Vice President does not want to answer a question, like Major League Baseball, he does not answer the question. Amazing. The president on a couple of the briefings has stood back when the vice president's gotten a tough question, a yes or no question, and he does a very fine job of evading it. It's a skill set, right? You learn after he was the number 3 in the House for a long time. He's been the governor of Indiana. He was a talk show host for a long time. So he has a skill set which is unique, and it's well done. Let me remind you as well. ReliefFactor.com. There it is. Sponsor of the show, sponsor of interviews with people like Attorney General Barr and Labor Secretary Scalia. And I've got Senators McSally coming up, Cruz and Grassley on this show. It's where the news happens in the morning, whether it's the vice president or Senators 3. I bring it all to you because of ReliefFactor.com and other great sponsors. Don't forget NoSafeSpaces.com. Use the code SALE25 to get 25% off that great movie. Don't forget the Patterns of Evidence series. All right, you go to patternsofevidence.com and you use my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, you'll get 10% off. There's lots of great stuff to use during this lockdown. Use your time wisely and come right back. Senator McSally is next on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. That was the Vice President. The audio and transcript will be posted at hughhewitt.com. Pleased to welcome now United States Senator Martha McSally from the great state of Arizona. Senator McSally, good to be with you. Everybody fine in the McSally extended family?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Good morning, Hugh. Got back in late last night on Air Force One with the president. So yesterday was a great day. Now I'm back in the swamp.
Did you have a chance to chat with the president on the flight home?
I did, both on the flight there and the flight home. It was such an honor to host him in Arizona yesterday and show what the amazing people of Arizona are doing. That Honeywell plant we visited in 5 weeks turned into an N95 mask plant, and they'll be ramping up as a company to produce 20 million a month for Americans. That's exactly our way forward here. Let's stop relying on China.
Now, Senator, I just asked Vice President Pence, are we in Cold War 2.0? And there was a 4-second pause. And that, by the way, is close to where the radio stations think you've lost your feet and they switch over to pre-programming. And then he didn't answer the answer. Do you think we are in Cold War 2.0 with the PRC?
I don't know if I'd call it that, but they are our adversary. They want to replace us as a global leader. I look forward, not back. This is a very serious threat that has been growing over the last several decades. We need to confront them economically. They need to stop stealing our intellectual property. They need to stop cyber attacking us. They need to stop their propaganda influence operations. And I think most Americans have woken up because of this pandemic. Because they're seeing the Chinese Communist Party and their government firsthand in how they treated their own people, how they're continuing to lie to the world, and how they have now wreaked this havoc and death and destruction because of their reckless irresponsibility. And I think Americans, I know Arizonans, are tired of relying on China for producing things that matter for our national security and our health care. And so our way forward is holding them accountable, ensuring that they stop cheating, and continuing to bring manufacturing home so we rely on America, not China.
A couple of nights ago, the president went beyond reckless irresponsibility in a response he gave at the Lincoln Memorial. I want to play it for the audience. Here's the president a couple of nights ago.
What they really treated the world badly on, they stopped people going into China, but they didn't stop people going into the USA and all over the world. So you could fly out of Wuhan, where the primary problem was, all of the problem, essentially, also where the lab is. But you could fly out of Wuhan and you could go to different parts of the world, but you couldn't go to Beijing and you couldn't go to any place in China. So what's that all about? In other words, they knew they had a problem. I think they were embarrassed by the problem, very embarrassed. And, the case could be made. They said, hey, look, this is going to have a huge impact on China. And we might as well let the rest of the world, because
what he's saying there is they did it intentionally, Martha McSally.
Well, I had a long talk with the National Security Advisor on the Air Force One last night about this, and what was in their hearts, I can't tell you. But what we do know, where we're doing further investigations, is what the president just said, where they locked down travel to other parts of their country, but they allowed somewhere between 5 to 7 million people to leave and continue to allow travel internationally, especially to Europe. As we were talking last night, the vast majority of our states where we saw a huge increase in this virus over, in the March timeframe, was from Europe, because our European partners did not do what President Trump did in shutting down travel from China. And if Europe did what President Trump did in January, we would have had a very different scenario. And so our European partners need to wake up and realize, stop trying to work with China, stop trying to appease China, stop buying their propaganda, and work with us in order to stop them from trying to become, supplant us as the world leader. But we need to work together with our allies in order to confront them.
Now, Senator McSally, you're a fighter pilot, and fighter pilots know that old saying, the flak is thickest over the target. You see Chinese social media, which is controlled by the CCP. They're going nuts over this. What does that tell you?
Yep. They know they have a problem. You're over the target when you're getting flak. I say that all the time in politics. They know they have their problem. And what we need, by the way, is the mainstream media, the Democrats and others, to not be parroting their propaganda because they realize again, regardless of what was their intention, they unleashed this deadly virus. Had they just acted 3 weeks earlier, they would have contained it by 95%, studies show. And their reckless behavior in kicking out journalists, in silencing doctors, in destroying samples and evidence of those early days of this virus is still causing death and destruction.
Quick
America
exit question, Senator. Has your opponent said anything about the Communist Chinese Party and the PRC's conduct? Anything at all?
Not that we are aware of. I'm here trying to save lives and save livelihoods, and he's on the sidelines. But he is weak on China. His party is weak on China. And this is going to be, I think, a major issue when people make their choices in the next 6 months.
I agree. I think this campaign is about China, and I think people had better wake up to it right now. They are not our friends. They are adversaries, and I think we're in Cold War 2.0, and people had better wake up to that. Senator Martha McSally, always a pleasure. Thank you. Coming up, Ted Cruz, Chuck Grassley, and your phone calls at 1-800-520-1234. Hour number 3 of the Hugh Hewitt Show, straight ahead. Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. It's Hugh Hewitt, joined by United States Senator Ted Cruz. Good morning, Senator. How goes everyone in the Cruz family?
Hugh, good morning. We're doing terrific, and we're all doing great. How are you doing?
Good. Everyone is fine. I want to I don't want to bury my lead, Senator. You're on the Judiciary Committee, right?
Yes.
You're doing the federal circuit court judges first. I approve of that wholeheartedly. But can I do some special pleading for California? We've got judges like Mark Scarcy, who's had a hearing and no vote, Rick Richmond, who's in the queue for hearing. There are people in the White House clearance process like John Flynn who can't even get out because Senators Harris and Feinstein won't bless them. Can you get Lindsay to move some judges? Because it's a miscarriage of justice in California. There just aren't any judges.
Yeah, look, I believe you. Obviously, the Ninth Circuit has improved significantly, and we've moved through a number of Ninth Circuit judges. The priority, understandably, has been Court of Appeals judges first, although we've moved a lot of district judges as well. I can tell you from multiple conversations with Mitch McConnell that his commitment, and certainly my commitment, is that we are going to move through and confirm every judge that is teed up this year, that we're not going to leave. Mitch has said to me flat out, we're not leaving until the deck is cleared. And so now I can't help you with judges that are still in clearance and haven't been nominated by the White House. But once they're nominated, assuming there are not substantive problems that prevent them from getting the votes, our intention is to do what it takes to move them through and finish the confirmation process.
Well, there are people like Scarcy and Richmond and many others who've already gotten out of the White House, but it just seems to me like the Republicans may not care about California very much. But, a lot of terrible decisions start at the district court level in California. That if you fix a district court in California, you've saved ourselves a lot of legal problems, right?
Sure, absolutely. And as you know, I mean, the Ninth Circuit is almost 50-50 now.
Yep.
Now, that doesn't mean in any given case that you're going to get a good panel. For the folks listening, the way it works on a Court of Appeals is you'll have a whole bunch of judges on the Court of Appeals, and you randomly draw 3 of them. But if it's close to 50-50 in any given case, your chances of landing at least one judge who's willing to follow the law and ideally 2 judges who are willing to follow the law, those chances have increased dramatically. I remember I argued cases a decade ago in the Ninth Circuit, and it was if you were representing a defendant who was getting sued, sadly you told your client you're just paying. It doesn't matter what the law says. It doesn't matter what the facts are. You just got to pay whatever check they demand of you. And it was it has been a lawless court for a long time. I think we've made at least some real progress turning that around, but it's going to take longer to finish that process.
Senator Cruz, the last time I argued before the Ninth Circuit was in 2013, I think. I won with a Reinhart-led panel, but there was not. I had to retire, actually, before you even had a chance of drawing an en banc panel that could have a majority Republican. It's possible now that you could win on en banc, and that actually encourages settlement at the lower level. But boy, these district courts, I hope you can take Lindsay aside. Lindsay won't talk to me. He won't get up early enough.
Hugh, do your listeners know what you just said? That's kind of like saying, the last time I batted the major league, Cy Young was pitching, and I hit a home run off him and figured that was a good way to end my career. Like the name you casually tossed out there, Stephen Reinhart, was for decades the most renowned hardcore liberal on the Ninth Circuit. He's very smart and used to work for the ACLU, and utterly lawless. I mean, hard left. And if anyone embodied the lawlessness of the Ninth Circuit, it was Stephen Reinhart. The year I clerked at the Supreme Court, which would have been 1996 to 1997, there was a joke at the time that there was a macro. Now, this shows the time. I bet you half your listeners have no idea what a macro is. But on a computer, a macro used to be that you could hold down a couple of buttons and it would automatically type some things for you that you had pre-programmed.
Yeah.
And there was a joke that there was a macro Alt-9, which is if you were a clerk working on an opinion draft, you'd hit Alt-9, and it would pre-populate the opinion with, the decision below came from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Accordingly, we reversed unanimously.
Well, on that panel, I had.
Yeah, go ahead.
On that panel, I had Judge Bybee and Judge Hugg. So I had one of the better judges with Judge Bybee pulling on Reinhardt to bring him over to reason. So a 3-0 win with Reinhardt is still a 3-0 win with Reinhardt. But you get my point, Senator.
And very, very quickly, there was a phrase Reinhardt is alleged to have said. I don't know if it's true, but he is alleged to have said about the Supreme Court, well, they can't catch them all. In other words, he was going to keep making the decisions hard left, and some of them would get through. And I will tell you, law clerks for years made a point of reminding Justice Kennedy, he said that. Justice Kennedy came from the Ninth Circuit, and it would piss him off. And I have to say, that whether he said it or not, that he was alleged to have said it, resulted in a lot more cases coming from the Ninth Circuit and getting reversed.
Good. Now, I got to ask you more broadly than the Judiciary Committee, Senator.
Yeah.
I just had Vice President Pence interview play, and I asked him point blank, are we in Cold War 2.0? And we had a 4-second pause. You know, an 8-second pause means all the stations along the network, all 400 affiliates go to something else. They think you failed. So I was pretty close to pulling the parachute there. 4-second pause. He didn't want to say it. He didn't say it. Will you say it? Are we in Cold War 2.0?
I don't know about Cold War 2.0, but we're in an existential battle. Whether it will last 70 years, I certainly hope not, and I doubt it will. But we are facing two simultaneous national crises, the likes of which you and I have never seen in our lifetime. We're facing, number one, a public health crisis, the coronavirus pandemic, and that is substantial. It has produced over 257,000 fatalities worldwide. It is serious. We're taking extraordinary steps to flatten the curve, to slow the rates of transmission. And then we're simultaneously facing an economic catastrophe, a crisis. Over 30 million people, 30 million Americans have lost their jobs in the last 60 days. 30 million, the U.S. workforce between 160 and 165 million people, that's roughly 20% of the entire American workforce is out of work. Millions of small businesses are perilously close to going bankrupt. And it is a confluence, and the result, all of that is the result of government policies we put in place to try to defeat the pandemic. Every waking moment of my time is focused on defeating both of those crises. Now, I don't think we're going to look like the Cold War. I don't expect 10 years from now for us to still be talking about how do we defeat the coronavirus, but we may be talking about that. I hope not, but we may be talking about that a year from now. I hope we move faster than that in terms of developing an effective vaccine and a fully implemented testing regimen and an effective treatment. But we've got to defeat both, and then turning the economy around may be a several-year proposition.
Now, Senator Cruz, your answer to this, my last question, might carry us into the break. If so, I will play it on the other side of the break. The Leader McConnell, has said we've got to have liability protection in phase 4. I understand that businesses cannot stand up with a plaintiff's bar ready to pick over their bones, those of those who can walk after this thing is over. And I have therefore thought they ought to preempt all the state tort law, put all COVID claims in one district of the district courts of the United States, and establish a reckless indifference standard, because otherwise everyone will get sued for everything. You're going to be vital on this in judiciary. What is your recommendation about liability protection for American businesses, higher ed, everybody? We can't put ourselves. We just can't lay down in front of the plaintiff's bar and get picked over this way.
Look, there is no doubt that if we do nothing, there will be an onslaught, a tidal wave of lawsuits going after every small business in America for opening up and risking COVID-19. That's not an acceptable course of action. You can fully expect the Democrats, their priority throughout this crisis has been political. Take care of their partisan wish list. part of their political wish list is protect the trial lawyers, because the trial lawyers and the teachers unions are the two principal funders of today's Democratic Party. And so I fully expect that Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi will go to the barricades to protect the ability of the trial lawyers to sue everyone and try to extract billions from the system. I don't know how that will shake out. I got to tell you, from my perspective, my priority is we have got to get America back to work. We've got to get the economy moving. We've got to give people the opportunity to provide for their families and provide for their livelihoods. We cannot let this country fall into another Great Depression, and there are too many politicians in Washington, including Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats, who are not in Washington because they've fled from doing their jobs, who are not focused on getting the economy back to work. We need to keep people safe, follow sound science, follow the medicine, but also get people back to work so that we can harness the power of the American free enterprise system to bring this economy back with the same roaring force we had 3 months ago and the same prosperity we did. We can do it again, and that's what we're going to do.
So, Senator, is that a must-have? No Phase 4 unless it preempts tort claims and establishes one standard that protects businesses?
I think it is a very important principle. It's not clear to me what is going to be in the next legislative package. I think it is highly fluid. In the Senate, we just got back to D.C. this week. We've all been working from home for the past month. I can tell you our lunch yesterday, we spent about half the lunch talking about exactly this topic. I would say it is fluid. The Democrats are looking to spend another $1 trillion, $2 trillion. Their top priority seems to be bailing out big blue states that have massive unfunded pension liabilities, that have lived irresponsibly, that have spent themselves into a hole. It has nothing to do with coronavirus. It has everything to do with irresponsible decisions from state politicians who were trying to buy votes and get themselves elected. And I got to tell you, I, for one, and I think a lot of at least the Republicans in the Senate, see no reason why the rest of the country should be forced to pay higher taxes because those politicians won't live within their means. In Texas, we've lived within our means. We haven't dug a hole of, the Illinois pension fund debt is $241 billion. That's just irresponsible. And I see no reason why the people of Texas should have to pay for that sort of irresponsible spending, particularly when the Illinois politicians don't intend to change. They plan to keep doing it. In fact, they wrote into their state constitution that they can never alter those pension obligations. Well, if they want to keep digging the hole, don't expect the rest of the country to suffer, to subsidize their reckless behavior. And
well said, Senator.
That fight is going to be front and center in the next bill.
Well said, and thank you for your time, Senator. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Hugh.
What's that? Yeah.
Lawyers and every small business
In one district of the
lot, a tidal wave of lawsuits
about liability protection. What is your recommendation? There's judiciary. What is judiciary? What Welcome back, America. Here's the conclusion of my interview with Senator Cruz. What is your recommendation about liability protection for American businesses, higher ed, everybody? We can't put ourselves, we just can't lay down in front of the plaintiff's bar and get picked over this way.
Look, there is no doubt that if we do nothing, there will be an onslaught, a tidal wave of lawsuits going after every small business in America for opening up and risking COVID-19. That's not an acceptable course of action. You can fully expect the Democrats, their priority throughout this crisis has been political. Take care of their partisan wish list. Part of their political wish list is protect the trial lawyers, because the trial lawyers and the teachers' unions are the two principal funders of today's Democratic Party. And so I fully expect that Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi will go to the barricade to protect the ability of the trial lawyers to sue everyone and try to extract billions from the system. I don't know how that will shake out. I got to tell you, from my perspective, my priority is we have got to get America back to work. We got to get the economy moving. We've got to give people the opportunity to provide for their families and provide for their livelihoods. We cannot let this country fall into another Great Depression, and there are too many politicians in Washington, including Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats, who are not in Washington because they fled from doing their jobs, who are not focused on getting the economy back to work. We need to keep people safe, follow sound science, follow the medicine, but also get people back to work so that we can harness the power of the American free enterprise system to bring this economy back with the same roaring force we had 3 months ago and the same prosperity we did. We can do it again, and that's what we're going to do.
So, Senator, is that a must-have? No, Phase 4, unless it preempts tort claims and establishes one standard that protects businesses?
I think it is a very important principle. It's not clear to me what is going to be in the next legislative package. I think it is highly fluid. In the Senate, we just got back to D.C. this week. We've all been working from home for the past month. I can tell you our lunch yesterday, we spent about half the lunch talking about exactly this topic. I would say it is fluid. The Democrats are looking to spend another $1 trillion, $2 trillion. Their top priority seems to be bailing out big blue states that have massive unfunded pension liabilities, that have lived irresponsibly, that have spent themselves into a hole. It has nothing to do with coronavirus. It has everything to do with irresponsible decisions from state politicians who are trying to buy votes and get themselves elected. And I got to tell you, I, for one, and I think a lot of at least the Republicans in the Senate, see no reason why the rest of the country should be forced to pay higher taxes because those politicians won't live within their means. In Texas, we've lived within our means. We haven't dug a hole of, the Illinois pension fund debt is $241 billion. That's just irresponsible. And I see no reason why the people of Texas should have to pay for that sort of irresponsible spending, particularly when the Illinois politicians don't intend to change. They plan to keep doing it. In fact, they wrote into their state constitution that they can never alter those pension obligations. Well, if they want to keep digging the hole, don't expect the rest of the country to suffer, to subsidize their reckless behavior. And
well said, Senator.
That fight is going to be front and center in the next bill.
Well said, and thank you for your time, Senator. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Hugh.
I got to tell you as well, pre-market report brought to you by Andrew and Todd.com. Andrew Del Rey, Todd Avakian. Got to sneak it in here. And it looks pretty mixed overseas. The English index was up 0.6%. Germany was down overseas. Japan down almost 3%. Hong Kong up 1%. I don't know what today holds. Disney numbers were abysmal, but their streaming service added 26 million people. So who knows what's going to happen on the market today. It's such a bumpy market. But the one thing that holds true is that interest rates on buying or refinancing a home are as low as they get, 0.66% on the 10-year Treasury. Interest rates have never been better. If you need to get money out of your house, now is the time. Call Andrew and Todd. They're with Sierra Pacific Mortgage at 888-888-1172. or go to andrewandtodd.com. Andrewandtodd.com. Answer a couple of questions. I'll be right back to you. Don't go anywhere. Chuck Grassley is next on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of The Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Prison Fellowship's Angel Tree Summer Camps. Click on the banner at hughhewitt.com.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, joined now by United States Senator Chuck Grassley. Senator, I read that you drove back from Iowa on Sunday. How long does that take?
15 hours, and we drive straight through. And there's two things. One, it takes about 7 hours if you fly and change airplanes and drive from the Des Moines airport to the farm. So you're talking about twice the time that it would be flying. But it's also a little bit relaxing in the sense of being by yourself. But the real reason was that I didn't want to be confronted with this virus situation on airplanes. But now that they have the protocol of wearing masks on the in the airports and on the airplanes, I think when I go home, I try to go home every weekend. So when I go home, I'll probably fly the next time, because if you're just home for a weekend, you can't spend 30 hours on the road, 15 each way. So I go home to keep in touch with my constituents, even though you can't have meetings.
I asked this, Senator, because my wonderful wife, the fetching Mrs. Hewitt's got a lead foot and a number of tickets to prove it. Do you observe the posted speeds when you're driving from Iowa to D.C.?
No, I would say 10 miles an hour over the speed limit.
All right, I love your honesty, Senator.
I think that's kind of a rule of thumb, that if you are within that limit, 9 miles an hour, that you probably aren't going to get stopped.
You may hear from the local highway patrols on that one, Senator. A couple of years ago, you made news. I asked you if you'd heard anything about the Supreme Court retirements. Have you heard anything about Supreme Court retirements this spring?
No, not at all, except the discussion has been going on about McConnell. If there is a vacancy, it's going to be taken up. But I don't expect there's going to be a vacancy because at least no person appointed by a Democrat president is going to resign before the election, because they want to take a chance on Biden being elected president and putting somebody like the 4 liberals that are on there, replacing liberal with liberal. Of course, if Trump's reelected, and I think he's going to be reelected, then we've got a chance, if one of them resigns, of getting another conservative, or if one of the Republican appointees would resign, we would have a chance of replacing like with like.
Do you expect any of the Republican appointees to retire in June or July?
Oh Lord, I hope not.
All right.
I haven't heard anything, and I don't. I think I think they're such stalwarts, and there's really only one of them that's of an age you might think about retiring, and I hope that guy never retires.
Yeah, I know. Justice Thomas is he's right on the Commerce Clause, for one thing. Senator Grassley, I want to do some special pleading. I did it with the Vice President today. I did it with Ted Cruz. I want to do it with you. You're on Judiciary. The California District Courts are in a terrible situation. We've got a nominee, Mark Scarsi, who's had a hearing. We've got Rick Richmond and a bunch of others who haven't had a hearing. We got a bunch of people in the pipeline, like a Democrat, John Flynn, who I think has got Kamala Harris and Feinstein. Can we get some federal district court judges approved for California? Because honestly, it's like a judicial emergency all over the place.
Well, you're going to have to talk to Graham, because he honors the blue slip for district court judges. He's not going to honor it for circuit court judges, as I didn't honor it for circuit court judges. And as a result, I think that he would make that decision. And as much as I want to see the same kind of people on the district court, the same people on the district court that you want to see on there in California, I still would have to respect the chairman of the committee, because he respected me when I was chairman. And on the other hand, we shouldn't allow these blue slips to be abused, whether it's for district court judge or circuit court judge, particularly if the White House, the rule that I used when I was chairman of the committee for 4 years, 2 years under President Trump, as long as there was a good faith effort of the White House to consider the views of the senators from those states. That was a condition, and if there was really a dialogue between two senators or one senator in the White House, I felt that was what was needed. Now, I can't tell you in this case whether or not that dialogue's going on in the ones that you're interested in, but I think we have been somewhat successful in getting some reasonable people on at the district court level in California.
Well, you've got
one thing about the district court judges in California. It isn't who's on the district court in California. It's how radical the Ninth Circuit is in sustaining radical judges there or overturning some decisions that are more conservative, and I think we're gradually straightening out the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is kind of a protection then on the radicalism of a district court judge in California.
That's true. You've done the Judiciary Committee dating back to when you're chair and now under Senator Graham, done a great job on the Ninth Circuit. But Lindsey won't get up early enough to talk to me, so I can't lobby for Scarsey, Richmond, and the other people who've been nominated and waiting for hearings or votes. So if you just would nudge him a little bit to pay attention to the left coast, I would appreciate it, Senator.
I will. You asked me to do that, and I will do that.
You're a great American. Let's turn to your Finance Committee duty. Phase 4 is coming. I think it's going to be a showdown between Democrats wanting money for blue states. And I got to play you what Andrew Cuomo said yesterday about this. Cut number 9, please.
Who are now saying, why should we bail out the Democratic states? The Democratic states have been supporting them for years.
What do you think about that, Senator Grassley, that there are these blue states that have been supporting the federal treasury for years and they deserve relief more than red states?
The reason they're supporting red states is because the policies of their own party over the last 60 years to tax and spend all the money to Washington, D.C., and then distribute the goodies throughout the United States. And when if they don't like to be supporting red states, then don't have the federal government so dominant in the economy and in the absorption of the tax money, leave more of that tax money to the respective states.
So in terms of the deal that will emerge for Phase 4, Senator Cruz said the Democrats want money for the states. Leader McConnell wants liability protection and maybe preemption of tort claims to the federal level. What do you think the deal for a Phase 4 is going to be looking like, Senator Grassley?
Well, first of all, I accept what McConnell has said, that we have put out $3.5 to $4, at least $3.5 trillion over the last 6 weeks, that we ought to just take a deep breath and see how the economy's turning around and what's needed, rather than just as soon as you pass one bill, start thinking about another bill. Now, I want to say that going back a month, and I'll say it again now, when I helped negotiate for the Finance Committee part of what's called Phase 3 or the CARES Act, we went into it with open mind, open eyes, that we said for the first time in the 240-year history of the country, it's the fourth or fifth time we dealt with a pandemic, but it's only the first time that the governments have shut down the entire economy. We had a responsibility to open it up, and as we were negotiating a month ago, we thought in 3 months maybe things will be better and we won't have to do anymore. But we also said, if it isn't, we'll probably be doing the same thing. But I don't want to make that decision 1 month into this quarter. I think we ought to wait another 3 or 4 weeks before we start doing it. Now, I don't know whether what I just said is going to be governing or not. It'll be up to McConnell. But McConnell is right when he thinks if we're going to do something, we should protect the people from frivolous lawsuits because this pandemic is an act of God. And how do you sue God for something he did? You can't. And why would you expect people when there's an act of God, to be held responsible for anything? Now, that's almost saying, that people can't do something wrong and you can't be sued. But there ought to be some limit on that, is the way I look at it.
Senator, I agree with that. I'm not blaming God for this. That's theodicy. That's theology. It's above my pay grade. But I do not believe that plaintiffs' lawyers ought to be able to pick over the bones of businesses. Do you think we need a higher standard for liability in a COVID-related case for proximate cause? And should it be preempted by the federal government into the federal district court so that state tort law doesn't rule here?
The answer is yes, and I hope that's where we go. And I'm not sure how precisely it can be written to do exactly what you said. But after I said you can't sue God and act to God, I was going to go on and say basically what you said, and I won't repeat it. But I think it's important that we push that point. So the other side of the coin is if you can't sue God, you shouldn't have something that's this bad that nobody has control over to be an excuse to sue. And somebody gave us a figure yesterday at noon of about 770 lawsuits already filed.
Wow.
Doesn't that tell you something?
Yeah, it tells me the plaintiff's bar is being the plaintiff's bar, Senator, and we got to stop that, or we'll never recover. Last word to you.
Yeah, well, I think I have taken on the Bar Association in a couple instances since I've been a member of the Senate. The class action tort reform bills of the mid-2000s, I was the author of that, and also the author of bankruptcy reform that we did in the early 2000s.
Senator, always a pleasure. Watch that speed limit. I think the Smokies are going to be after you the next time.
Okay.
Good to talk to you, Senator. I do think that Dwayne believes in 19 miles over the speed limit. I think the fetching Mrs. Hewitt believes in 29 miles over the speed limit. I personally just do the speed limit. That's what I do. Time for me to tell you about ReliefFactor.com. I'm getting hammered on Twitter because I used a graphic by the New York Times. I'm sorry. I trusted the New York Times. I'm sorry. They were wrong. They put COVID death by state, and they should have put COVID death by state for a week. And so I used it. I'm sorry. I understand the New York Times screwed up. I should never trust the New York Times unless it's Scheer, Baker, or Christoph. But I do trust ReliefFactor.com. There you have it, ReliefFactor.com. Use it every single day. I carry curcumin, resveratrol, and omega-4 natural supplements that I take every day in the first hour and remind you about twice because I think it's useful for you. Coming back, Representative Mike Gallagher joins me to talk about the big win for Wisconsin. It's not a Packers win. Definitely not a Packers win. It's a win like ReliefFactor.com. It's a win that keeps on winning. Stay tuned, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Prison Fellowship's Angel Tree Summer Camps. Click on the banner at hughhewitt.com.
Welcome back, America. Everybody knows Wisconsin had a horrible week last week when the NFL happened and they recognized that their franchise is in for decades of misery. But they had great news when the Navy awarded a new frigate, and the congressional district in which that shipyard resides is at Mike Gallagher's district. Congressman Mike Gallagher joins me now. Good morning, Representative Gallagher.
Good morning, Hugh. Not even your Packers insults can ruin my mood and ruin this win for Northeast Wisconsin.
Would you tell people why this is significant and how significant it is?
Well, the shipyard that will be building the future frigate is in Northeast Wisconsin. It's in Marinette, Wisconsin. And so in the immediate sense, it means that we are going to keep alive one of our most important shipyards in the Midwest. And as we've talked about on multiple occasions, just for the overall health of the industrial base, and in light of the reduction in the number of shipyards we have here domestically, that is important for our national security. But more to the point, it means that you're going to have thousands of hardworking Wisconsinites and even some upper peninsula folks in Michigan coming to that shipyard every day, building a small surface combatant that will be the backbone of the future fleet, really lay the foundation for the future of the Navy. And so Wisconsin winning the frigate competition was not just a win for our state and our district and a culmination of years of work. It was a win for the free world and very bad news for the Chinese Communist Party.
Now, the whisper number, the ultimate build of this frigate, could be north of 70 ships. What do you understand the whisper number to be? And ought the Navy to get real right away and maybe open up a second yard and build it in two places?
It should. I think at a minimum, it has to be north of 50 ships. And if you could assume that we're going to be going into a budget-constrained environment in light of the challenges posed by coronavirus, I think it only emphasizes the need for more frigates, more small surface combatants, because these are half the cost of destroyers. They can go places destroyers can't go, and they're really ideal for that day-to-day presence mission that you want the Navy to be doing to continually signal to our friends and enemies that we aren't going anywhere and we're not going to be intimidating. And so the budget math is still up for debate right now, but I suspect when the dust settles and when we get the integrated naval force structure assessment that we are eagerly awaiting from the Pentagon, the real number will have to be closer to 50, 60, or 70.
Now, where would the second shipyard be? Would they open that up in, say, Ashtabula or Erie, Pennsylvania? Where would it go?
Well, I doubt it would go to a yard that isn't right now building Navy ships, although it could possibly. We have mutual friends who have talked eloquently about the need to get to an eighth shipyard. It could go to Bath in Maine. My good friend Angus King would be very happy about that. We would further solidify our unusual alliance, and he is, of course, married to an ardent Packers fan, so we have a lot in common.
That's sad. Okay.
Well, hey, Hugh, only the best people can root for the best teams. But there's a variety of different places it can go, particularly if we start to get in the business of building two a year. There's certainly enough work to go around in different yards. And part of the reason I think we won, and part of the reason I think we're able to ramp up quickly, avoid delays, and avoid some of the pitfalls we saw with the LCS, let's be honest, is because this is a proven design, right? This is a design that is operational. Four navies are using it right now. You might recall the second strike against Bashar al-Assad in Syria was conducted by a French FREM. The FREM also has extensive experience tracking Russian subs across the Med, and it's operated across a number of allied navies. And so really the opportunity this presents to draw closer to our allies around the world is huge. And when you look at all of this in the context of what's happening in the background, right? As the global coronavirus worsens, the PLA is staging intimidating exercises around Taiwan. They're flying bombers into Taiwanese airspace. In the South China Sea, they're conducting a large military exercise. They're claiming they expelled U.S. Navy ships from the South China Sea. All the more reason why we need a bigger fleet in general and a fleet with a lot of small surface combatants and frigates in particular.
Okay, now, Congressman, I'm just a civilian. I can't even read New York Times graphics right this morning, although I think they got the graphic wrong. Is it technically possible for Bath to convert to the FREM quickly in Maine? And you got 45 seconds.
I think it is. There was some early discussion about a partnership between the two yards, but I don't want to speak without the details. But anything is possible when you unleash the power of American industry. And as you wrote very eloquently this week in the Washington Post, it is long past time for a little Freedom's Forge operation here. And I think, if we give that consistent signal to our industrial base, they will deliver every single time.
I agree with you. Congressman Mike Gallagher, a sad thing, I didn't know Angus King was married to a Packers fan. We'll try and get an intervention going there, but it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Rep Gallagher on Twitter. I got so many audio and transcripts. The Vice President's is posted. Ted Cruz, Martha McSally, Chuck Grassley will be up. Lots more ahead. Thanks, America. I'll be back tomorrow on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.
This portion of the Hugh Hewitt Show has been brought to you by MyPillow. Call 800-951-5493 or go to MyPillow.com and be sure to use a promo code HUGH.